I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 419. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. Welcome aboard to all of you who are new. Glad to have you here. Hope you'll stick around. Hope you'll come back for more Armed Lutheran Radio goodness next week. And hope you'll check out the back catalog. 418 previous episodes, plus some special goodies in there that we used to call midweek meditations. If you're a Reformation Gun Club member, there's even more than that. Hundreds of hours of exclusive content for our Gun Club members. And we'll be talking a little more about that in a minute. But I'm glad you're here. Glad to have you with me. This, as I said, episode 419. Last week in our monthly online hangout, episode 418. I'm not good at math. I promised that we would do an online, or we would do a variety show, sorry. Brain fuzz, trying to do two things at once. So I promised a variety show last week, and today is supposed to be a variety show, but there's not a whole lot of variety. Not a whole lot of variety on offer, unfortunately. But you will be hearing another voice, a new voice today, a special guest that I mentioned in last week's online hangout, talking about the use of .22s in long-range rifle training. And so looking forward to hearing from our new contributor. Reached out recently to members of the Reformation Gun Club, members who have special talents or abilities, experience that might be of interest to the listeners, and hope to be bringing some more new voices to you in future episodes. And really appreciate Stephen Clifford, who will be joining us shortly, and his contribution. Hope you will enjoy that. Stick around for it. Speaking of the Reformation Gun Club, I do want to thank all of the members for making this show possible. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded. It means we don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. You're not going to hear any ads in the show except for this kind of shout out for the Gun Club. This week's shout out for our members goes to great people like Eric from Buckeye, Ohio, Justin from Berryville, Arkansas, Timothy from Keysport, Washington, Vincent from Tulare, California, David from Kennesaw, Georgia, Donald from Berthoud, Colorado, Kevin from Marion, Iowa, Kurt from Rialto, California, and our newest member, Mark Eicher. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you to all of the members of the Reformation Gun Club. If you would like to become a member, it's really simple. Contributions are accepted through Give, Send, Go, which is a Christian-based crowdfunding website. Just go to reformationgunclub.com, or you can find Armed Lutheran Radio at Give, Send, Go. Sign up today, and you'll get access. We'll send you out information on how you can access the hundreds of hours of exclusive content available for our Reformation Gun Club members, and you'll get the invitations to our online hangouts. Another one we'll be doing later this month, and of course, the satisfaction of knowing that you helped make all of this craziness possible. So visit reformationgunclub.com for more information and come sign up today. All right, before we get to Stephen's inaugural post, I did want to mention right off the bat here the devastation caused by Hurricane Helene. We kind of mentioned it briefly, only just checking in on one of our members who's over in Florida last week. Please, if you would, keep all the victims and all those affected in your thoughts and prayers. And if you can, do what you can to help out, whether that means donating money or food or clothing or your time if you're in the area and you have the skills, the equipment and the ability to do so. It is one of the scariest and most horrible things I've seen. And there have been some scary and horrible things in the past, of course. You think back to Hurricane Katrina, but I think this one struck me differently because it's where I grew up, largely. One of the hardest areas hit was, as I said, where I grew up in Western North Carolina. And there's a section, I think, of Interstate 40 between Asheville, North Carolina, and Knoxville, Tennessee. I think it's actually between Pigeon Forge and Asheville that is closed, and it's going to be for at least a year as massive mudslide basically just washed part of the interstate off the mountain. Entire towns are underwater, and so it's just an astounding sight. And I know for all of my erudite external appearances and fancy talk, you may not realize that I grew up, most of my family, both sides of my family, are from the areas hardest hit by the storm in rural western North Carolina, Yancey, Mitchell, Buncombe, and McDowell counties in North Carolina. They're the rural of the rural areas of the country. It's very steep mountains, crisscrossed by dirt roads, or dirt and gravel. Still places where they don't have indoor plumbing. Little tiny towns, small places where the people living next door are as close as family, mainly because most of the people who live around you are family, or they are relations of some sort. That's why you'll see so many of the branches and hollows and street names up in there in that part of the country are family names. So Cox's Creek or Conley Branch or Bailey Branch, where my family comes from, Honeycutt Creek or Bird Branch, places where groups of families and their relatives settled way back when, and even today are all still related to one another. The next road over from where you live may just be a mile or 2 miles away, but those people living there, separated by thick woods and steep mountains, might as well be in another country. And it's so steep and hilly that it's no wonder if you dump that kind of, the kind of rainwater that Hurricane Helene brought, you dump that much water into those branches, all the branches that feed into the Catawba and Tow rivers, you're going to get a disaster. There's just no two ways about it. And that brings me to the story I wanted to talk about today, which was something that popped up on my feed from CNN. Originally posted from WSOC TV in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's a story about a man named Sam Perkins who lives in Charlotte, but his parents are living in the normally sleepy town of Spruce Pine. Now, Spruce Pine is as quaint as it sounds. It's a small town with, it's perched on top of a mountain. No big box stores, no fancy restaurants. There's some quaint little things being built. I think they did build there's a big Walmart supercenter way on the outskirts of town. But for many, many years, just a sleepy, quiet little town. My son was born there. My wife's family is, and parts of my family are from that area. My brother owns a cabin, which was handed down to him from our uncle, that is not far from there, but is now inaccessible thanks to the hurricane. And thanks to that hurricane, Spruce Pine, the sleepy town of Spruce Pine, was basically decimated. It was flooded. I think it received up 8 feet of water, of flood water in Spruce Pine. Think about that. 8 feet of water in a town that's on top of a mountain. I saw photos of the town recently with only the rooftops of people's homes visible. It is really amazing. It reminds me of Hurricane Katrina. But this is in steep, hilly, mountainous western North Carolina. It's an amazing sight. Well, on September 26th, about a week ago, Mr. Perkins, Sam Perkins, called his parents, who are in their 70s, and they live in Spruce Pine. But he couldn't get through to them, and he was worried. He'd seen the same pictures that I described, the town underwater and people's homes flooded and, sides of mountains washed away, and he got worried. So he got in the car, and he drove north, Charlotte to Spruce Pine, or as close as you probably could get, which would be Morganton or Marion, North Carolina. Is probably an hour and 10, 20 minutes. And then he found that he couldn't drive any further. And so he parked the car by the side of the road and he started hiking. With roads closed and covered with, thick mud and running water, he hiked 2,200 feet up the mountain, 11 miles on foot. And I don't exactly know what path he took. That I have not seen that in a couple or 3 articles that I've read about this. I don't know what direction he went. I know he posted some pictures, and I did not look really closely at those pictures to see where he was. But I know that there's 2 ways to get up the mountain to Spruce Pine from where I grew up. Highway 121 up through Linville Gorge, or the much older Highway 226, which is older roads, 2 lanes. That's even worse. And it's filled with switchbacks and sharp turns and steep grades, high rock faces on one side, and drops off into the valley below, terrifyingly steep drops in places. It's a rough drive. It's not a drive that you can, it's not a relaxing Sunday drive kind of thing winding through the mountains. It's not relaxing at all. And I can't imagine walking it. Fortunately, when Perkins got to the top and got to his parents' home, he was relieved to find Dad standing out in the front yard cleaning up all the trees and branches that had been downed in his yard. And thanks be to God, Perkins' parents were okay. They were running a little low on water, but they were fine. Had no power at the time. Probably still don't. But they were okay. And Perkins decided even more, this is, I think, even smarter. He decided rather than stay, it's smarter and dangerous at the same time, rather than use up the supplies that his parents already had, water and food, he decided that he would walk back down the mountain, another 11 miles back down the mountain to his car that same night. So as I said, thank goodness, thank the Lord, his parents are okay, but keep in mind that several hundred others did not survive, and many are still unaccounted for. And as it turns out, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, doesn't have enough money to help with these tens of thousands of Americans who have been affected by this horrible storm. And why is that, I'm sure you ask? I can hear you asking now. Well, it's because FEMA spent over $1 billion in the last year housing illegal immigrants and busing them around the country. To places like Springfield, Ohio, where the population of the town doubled thanks to an influx of migrants from third world crap holes in Central and South America and the Caribbean. And now rural towns and cities in the South have been literally turned into crap holes by this massive hurricane, washing everything away and destroying, knocking out water and power. And we don't have the funds to adequately help. Think about that. We don't have the funds to help our own citizens because we spent it all on illegal immigrants. Now, the truth is, the federal government sucks at this kind of thing anyway, and it always has, because when you set aside money for emergencies, that money, like a 8-year-old boy, tends to burn a hole in your pocket, and politicians who have the brain power generally of 8-year-old boys would rather spend that money now than save it for a literally rainy day. And naturally, they're going to ask for more funding now because they don't have enough, supposedly. I mean, they can't possibly divert funding from their illegal immigrant operations, from illegal immigrant housing, or from any of the other alphabet soup agencies that are wasting our money. Nope, they're going to ask for more. And this is where the discussion, I think, of foreign aid makes some sense to me. At least it has some impact. I don't buy much the argument, the idea that we're wasting money on foreign aid when we should be spending it here at home, when we're wasting vastly larger sums of money on very stupid projects. If you're worried about waste, then looking at the budget for foreign aid doesn't make sense to me, because that's a tiny drop in the bucket compared to the billions of dollars that we basically flush down the toilet on, like I said, the alphabet soup agencies and pork barrel projects buying votes. That's where the real waste is. But it does have some impact to point out that we can afford billions of dollars to give to, say, Ukraine or Israel, but we're out of money for disaster relief for the victims of Hurricane Helene. That to me is scandalous. Remember how we absolutely, the media absolutely savaged George W. Bush for his handling of Hurricane Katrina. This is far, far worse. Far worse. The handling of Hurricane Katrina was not hampered by our efforts to house and feed and provide transportation for illegal immigrants. But our funding for disaster relief for Hurricane Helene victims is, because we, for 3.5 years, have had a wide open border specifically because that's what this administration wants. Cynically, I would say even that since most of the people affected are not voting blue, this is rural western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, eastern Georgia, and those people are not voting for Democrats. And cynically, I would say that, because those people are Republicans, there's no real urgency in providing for them. I hate to ascribe motivation to people's poor judgment and planning, And I pray that that's not a real consideration when it comes to this stuff, but you can't help but think that. Still, this is a cleanup that's going to take years. It's going to be a massive effort. And largely it's going to be done by local folks and good-hearted people from across the region who will chip in as they always do. Think back again, Hurricane Katrina, and I don't remember the name of the hurricane that hit and flooded Houston a few years back. But you had the Texas Navy, right? People just taking their boats and going out and trying to help and doing what they could to find survivors and helping to deliver supplies. It's going to be that again. Local, good-hearted, local people making it happen. Because as our good friend, our old contributor, Aaron Israel, pointed out recently, Daddy Government is not going to be there to help out when you need him. Government was instituted by God for our good, as it says in Romans 13. But government is run by men, not by God. And so it tends to mess things up. And it's not going to be there to save you. So the point of this little conversation here, folks, is that you need to be prepared. And whether that means having the physical fitness to hike 11 miles up a mountain, 2,200 feet up a mountain, and then 11 miles back in the same day, or whether it means keeping sufficient supplies in case of a storm, in case you lose power, having water, having extra cases of toilet paper and food, emergency food, backup generators or whatever. Do you have a plan? Do you have an escape plan? Do you have the training that is necessary to protect yourself and your loved ones? And for each person, it's going to be different what their needs and what the requirements are. But whatever those requirements are, you have to keep in mind you are your own first responder. And then you have to remember too that we're not guaranteed a single additional hour of our lives. The Son of Man, Matthew 24 reminds us, is coming at an hour you do not expect. And sadly, over 200 people found that out in this latest earthly tragedy. We know not the day nor the hour. So that means being prepared, not only prepared so that you can potentially, hopefully, survive one of these disasters. And it doesn't have to be a major disaster like a hurricane. It could be the snowpocalypse like we had here in Texas a few years back, or it could be the power's out, the water's, you can't drink the water for some reason. I think Flint, Michigan, or some of the boil water requirements around here lately, or whatever it might be. A tornado, an earthquake, depends on where you are around the world. Are you prepared for the most likely horrible scenario to happen? But it also means preparing in case you don't survive. Be prepared to survive a disaster, but also be prepared in case you don't. So, my question to you today, one that I've been thinking about myself, is, are you ready? Have you done enough to ready yourself and prepare for your family's future and safety? Do you have life insurance? Do you have a will? I mean, I know life insurance is something that young people don't think about a lot. But if you're a young person with a family, wife and children to care for, something you need to consider. Do you have a will? Again, young people don't think about this. I never thought about it in my 20s. But once you have a family and you have people who rely on you, you need to have that kind of stuff prepared. It's not something you want to think about because you think when you're young, you think you're invincible. But it's something you need to think about once you become once you're a family man and you have people depending on you, a wife and children who are looking to you to provide and who will be most adversely affected by your loss. Do you have all your affairs in order? Does your family know where to find that information if they need it? If you're injured or sick or dead, all the paperwork and the insurance stuff, the safe combinations, the passwords to your online accounts. Have you got an unresolved issue between yourself and someone else? Maybe it's an estranged family member or an old friend that some difference has driven you apart. Don't waste time resolving it. At the very least, making some amends. Have you been a stranger in God's house? Has it been a while since you've been to church? Has it been a while since you've heard God's word rightly preached and had his sacraments rightly administered? If it has, don't wait to go back. Don't sit there and say, well, there's not a church close to me. Oh, that last church I went to, you hear the stories of people who are burned out on whatever. I'm what's the word? I'm spiritual, not religious, or I don't believe in. Throw all that stuff away and throw away all the excuses for not going back to church and find a place and go. Don't wait to resolve it. Don't wait to go back. Maybe you're a young person like my son or one of your own children, or maybe you're in this situation. You're in your 20s or whatever, and you have this special person in your life, but you're holding off marriage because I'm not saying this is the case for my son or for yours, but there are people out there who hold off big life decisions because they feel like they're not ready, or they want to be in a better place financially, or whatever that might be. Are you holding off some big decision for later? You may not have the time. So don't wait until you're quote unquote ready. Because if you do, you never will be. Or when you are, it'll be very late in your life. Or it may be too late. Don't wait. We are not guaranteed a single day. We know not the day nor the hour. So my advice today to all of you is to be ready. And I hope you'll continue to keep the victims and the families affected by this horrible hurricane that swept through the southeast. I hope you will keep all these folks in your prayers, your thoughts and prayers, and do what you can to help out. You know what you're capable or able to do. So whether that's, like I said, whether it's sending some money, whether it's donating food or blood or clothing or what have you, or if you're capable of going and getting on the ground and doing some hard work, God bless you if you do. I hope you'll do that. Okay, now it is time to hand things off to a new contributor, a new voice here on Armed Lutheran Radio, who will from time to time be submitting things that you may find interesting. Stephen Clifford is from the great state of Virginia, and he is a rifle enthusiast. And if you've watched any of the online hangouts, or if you have seen his YouTube videos, he knows his stuff when it comes to things like the Scout rifle. And he has submitted for our consideration an awesome segment about using 22 long rifle to help train and prepare yourself for long-range precision rifle shooting. So stick around for that. That's coming up next. Until I talk to you next week, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
I'm Steve Clifford, and I'm a member of the Reformation Gun Club. I have a YouTube channel at Cliffy109, and if you visit my channel, you'll see that I've done a lot of work on things like slings, scopes, and plenty of content on the Scout rifle. It's a really rifle-centered channel. You will also see that for the last 2 years, I've been working on a general purpose rifle, which I define as a rifle that can do anything you could expect a rifle to accomplish. In order to get to this, I needed to learn precision long-range shooting. It was one aspect of shooting that I had never done, and I realized that I needed to know how to do it in order to make myself a more well-rounded rifleman. The story of that journey will likely be in a future episode, but I want to focus on one aspect of it today. The biggest barrier to entry for long-range shooting was not the equipment, the training, or finding information on it. The biggest barrier to entry was finding a place where I could regularly train at long range. I live in Virginia, and here on the East Coast, there are precious few ranges that are longer than 300 yards, and most are 100 yards or sometimes even less. You can learn a lot at 100 yards that relate to long-range shooting, but you can't learn some very important things like how to correctly dial for elevation, how to use a reticle, how parallax affects your shooting, and most importantly, you can't learn the effects of wind on a bullet. There's just no substitute for trigger time at longer ranges for this. Well, it turns out there is a very effective workaround. The lowly 22 rimfire is a fantastic training aid for long-range shooting. The difference in bullet drop and wind deflection are roughly 4-to-1 comparison to a typical centerfire rifle. That means that a 200-yard shot with a 22 is going to have similar bullet drop to a centerfire at 800 yards. The wind is going to have roughly the same effect between the two. Your fundamentals on the rifle will have about the same impact on your accuracy as well. There are a few things to keep in mind if you decide to go this route. You're going to need to set up a rifle the right way. Of course, you could just use your old Ruger 1022 that you already own, slap a scope on it, and call it good. But I suggest setting up a rifle that feels very similar to your centerfire rifle. In my case, I have a Sig Cross in 6.5 Creedmoor, and I wanted to find something that would have the same feel and feature set. I found that the Ruger Precision Rimfire met what I needed. It has the same pistol grip, safety, and forend. The stock doesn't fold, but I could set the length of pull and the cheek piece to the same point. I use the same bipod between them. I have a less expensive scope on the rimfire, but it still has a good dialing turret with plenty of internal adjustment, a good reticle, and parallax adjustment. My Sig has a 4.5 to 18 power scope, and the rimfire has a 3 to 15 power. Both are front focal plane. All of those things are important. One comment about the Ruger Precision Rimfire. Mine was not very accurate out of the box. I ended up replacing the barrel with a Shaw barrel, which took all of about 10 minutes, and it didn't require any special tools or skill. It added a bit to the overall cost of the rifle, but it was still way less than some of the high-end rifles in this category. You are also going to need at least one steel target. I recommend 2 or 3 of various sizes, but if you can only do one, you're fine. Try and match the size of the target to the range you're shooting. Meaning if all you have is 100 yards, get some smaller targets. But if you're going out 200-300 yards, having something bigger and scaling down after that, it's a good idea. Now, a word about the ammo. Rimfire ammo, the quality varies a lot, and you get what you pay for. But even the best rimfire ammo is going to cost you a fraction what precision centerfire ammo costs. My rifle prefers Ely Match, which is about 33 cents a round, and that's if you shop online. I get decent results with much cheaper ammo, but even the 33 cents a round is still about a third of the cost of the cheapest match ammo you're going to be able to find for a centerfire. Probably even less than that. So go get your rifle zeroed at either 25 or 50 yards and get yourself a good ballistic calculator. I have found that the one ballistic calculator that really works best is called Chairgun Elite. And it is the only one that I've found that allows you to select the drag function called RA4. Most ballistic calculators give you the choice of either a G1 or G7 drag functions. I'm not a physicist, and I can't tell you how or why this works, but it turns out that RA4 gives you much better bullet drop data for .22 long rifle. Out to 350 yards, I'm finding that it is absolutely dead on. I haven't spent enough time to work with it to know if it well works beyond that, but 350 yards is a very long shot. And to give you an idea of that, I have to dial 14.7 MRAD to get out to 350 yards. And you can look up the comparison between MRAD and MOA if you want to know, but 14.7 is a lot. On my SIG Cross, that's what I have to dial for a 1,200 yard shot. With the ballistic data and a properly zeroed rifle, next thing to do is to get out to 200 yards and start hitting steel. You are immediately going to get the biggest grin on your face, and you're going to chuckle at how much fun it is to ring steel with such a small and easy-to-shoot rifle. I've taken a lot of people out with this thing, and every one of them just starts giggling, and they can't remember when they had that much fun. It is really satisfying to pull the trigger, wait 2 seconds or more before you hear that distinctive ring of your bullet hitting the steel. Besides being fun, you are also learning almost everything that you need for long-range shooting. You're learning the critical importance of the fundamentals. You'll see exactly what goes wrong when you slap the trigger or don't breathe correctly. You're going to learn how wind affects the bullet in flight. You'll learn how important parallax is if you try to shoot from different shooting positions. You'll get experience dialing for elevation and using ballistic calculators. You'll get all of that at a fraction of the cost of shooting a centerfire. But the most important thing is you'll have so many more places that you can train. The only thing that it doesn't help you learn is recoil control. Now, be aware of that when you train with a .22. But that means that when you do switch to a centerfire rifle, you'll have the rest of the things pretty well solidified, and you can concentrate on that aspect when you get the opportunity to do it. I'm Steve Clifford, and I hope that you've learned something from this. I hope to be a regular contributor to the Armed Lutheran podcast. And in the meantime, you can visit my YouTube channel by searching Cliffy109 at that website.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.